You're 16, sitting in the right seat of a Cessna at a small flight school in suburban Texas. $200 cash in your pocket for the discovery flight. The flight instructor is 24, paid $800 a week to take kids like you up on the same 40-minute pattern lap she flew yesterday. She taxis you to the hold short line. She runs the engine up to 1700 RPM. You feel the airplane buck against the brakes. She pushes the throttle full forward. This is every level of a private jet pilot's career, from a $200 discovery flight in a Cessna to $420,000 a year, tax-free on a Boeing business jet for the Dubai Royal Air Wing. There are roughly 15,000 cabin-class business jets in service worldwide. Fewer than 5,000 captains ever fly one for a private owner. 21 years from now, you'll walk a Saudi prince to a Mercedes Maybach at dawn and he won't see you. We'll get there. If you like breakdowns of how wealth actually scales, like and subscribe. Level 1, The Student. You walked into a hangar with worn vinyl chairs and a vending machine that takes quarters. You handed over the $200 at the front desk. The Cessna wet rental is $130 an hour. The instructor bills another $60 on top of that. You walk out 40 minutes later with a logbook entry and a sectional chart. You have a half-cracked plan to go to ATP flight school after high school. ATP's fixed cost 0 to flight instructor track is $123,995. That covers the private pilot license, the instrument rating, the commercial pilot license, the multi-engine rating, and the flight instructor stack. 250 hours of total flight time logged. A federal medical exam, the second-class one, at an aviation medical examiner for $185. King School's Ground School. 4Flight Pro Plus on the iPad. A David Clark headset, because the Bose noise-canceling headset is $1,200 and you don't have it. 70 to 80% of first-time private pilot students wash out before the check ride. Then there's the medical. You walked into the examiner's office with a paper application. You did not write down the Ritalin your mother prescribed you when you were 9. 6 months later, the federal deferral letter arrives. Class 2, medical deferred pending special issuance review. $3,000 to $15,000, 6 to 18 months of paperwork. Your Sallie Mae aviation loan keeps amortizing. The program clock at ATP expires while you wait for the special issuance letter that may never come. Or it does. You finish the stack. You sign your flight instructor certificate at 20. You have 250 hours in your logbook and a debt balance you can read but cannot pay. You need 1,200 more hours to even qualify for the regional airline interview. You start charging $45 an hour to teach the next 16-year-old to hold heading. Level 2, the flight instructor. You're 22, 1,400 hours in your logbook, sitting in the right seat of a Diamond Twin Star at 6:30 in the morning at a Phoenix flight school. The student next to you is your 6th this week. The annualized instructor contract works out to $38,400 a year on 70 instructional flight hours a month, plus 20 simulator hours, plus the occasional check ride sign-off. Your student loans hit $1,400 a month. The math is brutal. The 1,500-hour wall is real. Federal regulators wrote it into law after Colgan Air 3407 went down outside Buffalo in February 2009. 1,500 hours of total time to sit any scheduled airline right seat. The restricted version of the cert carves out an exception for Part 141 university graduates at 1,000 hours and for American military pilots at 750. You went the civilian Part 61 route. You have 140 hours to go. Then you pay the airline pilot training course at Flight Safety Wichita. $4,995 for 30 hours of ground and sim required before you can even sit the airline pilot written exam. The first-class federal medical, the airline grade one, at the examiner's office for $200 more. You time it for the spring 2020 hiring window. SkyWest, Republic, and Endeavor Air are pulling 4,000 first-year first officers at the highest pay packages in regional history. Then, COVID hits. Regional hiring drops 85% in 18 months. You hold at 1,300 hours for 14 months, drawing $40,000 a year, while a NetJets captain in the private terminal across the ramp pays for his coffee with a black American Express, and tips the line crew in cash. The other guys in your cohort wash out. They go back to college. They take dispatch jobs at the regional. One of them dies in a controlled flight into terrain in the Ozarks teaching a night cross-country. 2 of your 6 classmates have already sold their headsets and applied to UPS dispatch at $52,000 a year. 1 went to law school. 1 enlisted. 1 you have not heard from in 18 months. You stay. Level 3, the regional first officer. You're 25. Republic Airways hires you at $93.65 an hour with a $25,000 signing bonus and tuition reimbursement up to $115,000. First-year total comp lands at $94,200. You move to Indianapolis for a domicile you didn't pick. You take a crash pad on Hackensack Avenue for the 14 days a month you fly Newark turns. $600 a month for a bunk bed and a shared bathroom with 19 other commuting pilots. The aircraft is an Embraer regional jet. 2 pilots up front, 1 flight attendant, 76 passenger seats. You fly Newark to Charleston, West Virginia. You fly Indianapolis to LaGuardia. You fly the red-eye out of Las Vegas to Newark, and you watch the sun come up over Pennsylvania. You bid the line at Republic. You hold reserve for the first 6 months. You sleep in your uniform at 3 a.m., waiting for the phone to ring at 4. You miss your sister's wedding because the wedding falls on the second Saturday, and you're junior on the seniority list. You commute to Indianapolis from Sacramento on a third carrier's free non-rev pass. You pay $5,500 a year in food and incidentals you cannot reimburse. Year 3, you upgrade to captain. Your annual comp lands at $195,000 with overtime. Then your medical examiner finds the apnea, routine sleep study, a sleep apnea score of 47, your first-class medical suspended pending CPAP compliance and a 6-month adherence record. You sit grounded for 6 months. You lose $54,000 in income. The apnea entry sits permanently on your medical history. You will renew that medical every 12 months for the rest of your career. You come back. You apply to Delta and United into a stack of 30,000 qualified applicants. You apply to NetJets and FlexJet. NetJets responds at year 4 with a fractional first officer interview at Teterboro. Total comp, first year, $159,000. By year 10, the senior NetJets first officer band runs to $297,000. You take the seat. Level 4, the fractional first officer. You're 29. You sit in the right seat of a NetJets Cessna Citation at Teterboro at 0500. The principal landed at Newark 4 hours early on a different aircraft. The chief pilot called you at 4:45. The trip's been moved up. Wheels up at 6, Aspen at 9, local. You uplift 7,000 gallons of jet fuel on the company's Solaris account. You brief the pre-flight against the trip sheet that just hit your iPad. You walk the principal up the air stair at 5:58 and you say good morning. He does not acknowledge you exist. The rotation is 7 on, 7 off. You live in Charlotte. You fly to Teterboro on a free non-rev pass on American. You spend half your life in hotels you do not pick. The package climbs. Year 3 first officer total comp at NetJets, $240,000. FlexJet Red Label runs first officer at $115,000. First year and $135,000 third year. The Red Label Apex on a Gulfstream pays the chief aircraft commander $205,000 at year 3. VistaJet pays its long-range bombardier global first officer in euros, equivalent to $120,000. Then, Wheels Up Files, Chapter 11, October 2023, $1.4 billion in losses, 2,000 pilots furloughed. The Delta-led recapitalization in 2024 brings back 140 pilots at a 15 to 25% wage cut. A Wheels Up captain making $235,000 is offered rehire at $185,000 or the door. 600 pilots lose their seats permanently. You watch the news from your 7 off in Charlotte. You think about the mainline call you turned down at year 3 for the NetJets seniority you wanted. The rotation life caps at $340,000 for the senior NetJets captain. The mainline Delta captain at year 12 hits $460,000. You stay. Level 5, the corporate captain. You're 33. You command a Dassault Falcon for a Connecticut hedge fund founder under private operations rules. 2 pilots, 2 aircraft, single principal. The Falcon sits at Westchester. The Citation sits at Teterboro. The principal flies 410 hours a year. You sit 12 days a month in the briefing room at the private terminal at White Plains. The other days you do recurrent training at Flight Safety Wichita, or you walk the hangar inspecting the engine number 2 idle indication. The package, $260,000 base, $20,000 in annual bonus paid in December as a chief pilot decision. Type rating recurrent every 12 months, employer paid. The uniform is the principal's signature, navy double-breasted with 3 bars, dry cleaning, charged to the flight department account. You manage the principal's preference list, coffee at flight level 410, no fish on Tuesdays, the wife's allergies, the head of security in seat 1, A every leg. The principal's daughter starts at Brown in the fall. The catering uplift switches to dairy-free for her without anyone telling you to do it. The salary is not the thing. The thing is the principal's wife. She runs the calendar, she picks the catering, she decides whether you fly to Aspen for Christmas or stay home, and you find out by text at 4 in the morning the day before. Then the principal files for divorce. A 2-year contested settlement on a $48 million Falcon owned through a corporate trust. The aircraft becomes a community property asset. The flight department gets frozen. 14 months on retainer salary, no revenue flying, no maintenance, no recurrent training. The principal cuts you a check anyway because severing you mid-litigation costs more than keeping you. You spend the 14 months at home with your wife and the daughter you barely know. The aircraft sells for $34 million, acquired in 2018 at 48. The principal's ex-wife gets the citation in the settlement. You get 6 months of severance and a chief pilot reference call to Reliance Aviation, the apex placement firm in Houston, level 6, the heavy jet captain. You're 40. You hold the type rating on a Gulfstream, signed off after 4 weeks at Flight Safety Savannah on a Czech airman who has failed 2 of the last 6 pilots through the engine fire at takeoff profile. The type rating cost $83,500. The principal flight department paid the tuition up front, against a 36-month bond you signed in March. The seat is at a Texas oilfield services founder's flight department. Owner-operator Gulfstream. 2 captains on rotation, 2 first officers, 1 flight department director. The principal flies 540 hours a year. Houston to Vail, Houston to St. Tropez, Houston to Riyadh for the SABIC deal that closed in 2024. You sit left seat across the Atlantic on North Atlantic Track Charlie, the data link comms active, the long-range ocean qualification current. The package, $360,000 base. $80,000 discretionary annual bonus paid in December. Recurrent every 12 months at Flight Safety Savannah. Employer paid. You hit 49, routine recurrent. The wind shear escape sim ride. 16-knot crosswind, wet runway, an engine fire indication at decision speed +3. You execute the escape, but you exceed the Czech airman's deviation tolerance by 40 feet on the climb-out. Recurrent fail. $14,000 in remedial training. The chief pilot's confidence file gets the entry. You pass on the re-ride. The principal does not know. You hit 55. The principal sells the airplane to upgrade to a newer Gulfstream. He picks his new captain from the new flight department. You receive 6 months of severance and a placement agent introduction. You work the big business aviation convention floor in Las Vegas every October, looking for the chief pilot who will know your name. The waiting list for a comparable Apex Gulfstream seat at a billionaire flight department runs 3 to 7 years. You are 55. You take a contract pilot day rate at $3,200 a day while you wait. You pay your own recurrent training now. $28,000 a year out of pocket. Level 7, the principal's captain. You're 46. You command a Boeing business jet for the Dubai Royal Air Wing. 21 years from a Cessna 175 2 Discovery flight at a Part 61 school in suburban Texas. The Saudi Royal Flight in Jeddah operates the same aircraft type. You compete with their senior captains for the Apex 300 seats worldwide. The seat came through a Reliance Aviation senior search partner. He knew the chief pilot at the principal's adjacent investment vehicle. The chief pilot remembered you from the recurrent file at Flight Safety Savannah in 2018. Base salary $420,000 a year, tax-free under Emirati residency. Annual housing allowance $85,000. Business class home, leave 4 times annually. Full medical for the family. The aircraft sits on the ramp at Dubai World Central, at the corner of the Royal Terminal. The principal is the Crown Prince's elder cousin. He flies 42 times a year. The relief captain is a 41-year-old former French Air Force Mirage pilot, 8 years in the seat next to yours. The lead cabin attendant is a 36-year-old Lebanese woman who has worked the royal account since 2017. You walk the pre-flight at 0500, the trip sheet packet on your iPad, the catering manifest, the diplomatic clearance for the overflight of the Strait of Hormuz. The principal arrives by Mercedes Maybach at 0615. He does not see you. You walk him to the air stair anyway. The principal preference list is a 3-ring binder. The page in his handwriting lists his wife's allergies and the head of security's seat assignment. You have memorized it. Then, February 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. The sanctions wave parks 80 private heavy jets across European and American holding tracks within 90 days. Vladimir Potanin's Bombardier Global, Andrei Melnichenko's Global, Roman Abramovich's Boeing, the one called the Bandit, originally built for $170 million. Their captains are severed within 90 days. Russian flight time on the resume triggers Western Flight Department reluctance regardless of nationality. You watch the news from a holding pattern over Dubai, and you think about a colleague who flew Potanin's Global for 9 years. You hit 62. The principal's insurer requires a medical recert every 6 months instead of 12. You pass the recurrent, you pass the line check, you pass the medical. The principal quietly indicates that a younger captain might be more comfortable for the long haul. You receive a flight department director offer at Flight Safety Savannah, $240,000 a year. No rotation, no principal, no Maybach at 0615. You take it. 23 years, 8 first-class medicals, 3 principals, 2 divorces, 1,600 hours of recurrent training, 1 discovery flight at 16 years old in suburban Texas. The sun comes up over Cap d'Antibes from 45,000 feet. You're descending into Nice. The principal is asleep in the master suite at the back of the cabin. The lead cabin attendant has the espresso brewing in the forward galley. 21 years ago, you were 16, sitting in the right seat of a Cessna in suburban Texas, $200 cash in your pocket, the 1,500-hour wall, the $83,500 type rating, the $420,000 a year tax-free. The cost is not the money. The cost is the calendar. You see your wife 12 days a month. Your son turns 10, and you are in Riyadh on a fuel stop. You walk the principal to the Mercedes Maybach at 0730. He does not look up. The preference list. 3-ring binder, your handwriting now.